Hello and welcome. I am Kerry Ann. Thank you for joining us that are live. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are. This is our first time as Seven Sanctum as myself and Gavin. So I just wanted to firstly introduce you, Gavin. Welcome for and thank you for joining Seventh Sanctum. How are you feeling about it all?
Thank you for having me. I'm quite nervous. Never done anything remotely close to this before, so we'll see how it goes. But yeah, looking forward to the journey.
Absolutely. So, just a little something to expect from Seventh Sanctum. Myself and Gavin will be meeting every 2 weeks, and we'll be having discussions around our strong interests. So, myself, paranormal, psychology, anything in between. And Gavin, your strong interests, where would you say they were?
Probably with history, paganism, like folk magic and witchcraft, that kind of thing. Mm.
Absolutely. So, there'll be some crossovers there as well, because that is a little bit my jam too. Um, so I think the best place for us to really start is how did we get into the paranormal? So I'm going to ask you first, Gavin, and then I'll follow up afterwards. So how did your interest? Where did it begin? What happened? Have you got any cool stories, origin stories?
Yeah, I've got a weird one to be fair. So I was probably like 5 or 6. That's why the dark still makes me so uneasy. I went down to see my grandma in Devon. She lived in an old, I think it's 17th century smuggler's house. Massive doors, like so big, so heavy that I couldn't open or close them when I was that small. And I remember being in there one night. I woke up and it must have been like 1 or 2 in the morning. It was pitch black, and the only light that was on was in the bathroom. And then I got out of bed. I went to go to the bathroom, and between me and the bathroom was someone. They didn't respond when I said anything. They didn't do anything. They just stood there. I couldn't make out a face. I couldn't make anything out. I was so young that it could have been a dream, but I still remember it, and it still gives me chills. I'm still not comfortable in the dark. Um, yeah, and now I'm a big, scary man, not not a small child, and yeah, it still makes me uneasy. So that was kind of like where it started for me, and ever since then, I've been interested in anything that's not normal, basically anything and everything. Mm.
God, I love a bit of anti-normal. I think for me, I very much have a similar story to you. Again, being really young, and I remember going to the bathroom, coming back in. I was only about 7, and the way that my room was set up was that I had my bed and then a little bedside cabinet with a fish tank on top. But the door had was open ajar, not enough for me to be able to see through the door, but enough for me to just kind of see the light against the door from the hallway. And there was someone that walked out of my mum and dad's room and had stood outside my room, so it cast like a shadow, which within itself, actually, when you think about this, Harry Price taking the pulse of the dead child. Uh, there was definitely a shadow on my childhood door. There was no noise. It was a really old house, so it was really creaky. There was no noise coming from there, so it definitely wasn't someone walking along, and their bedroom door was shut. But now, the more I think about it, even now, there must have been a solid object to be able to cast a shadow on the door.
Yeah, 100%.
I never considered that before. Uh, and yeah, like I said, it gives Harry Price, right, the curious case of Annalise. Is it when he went and done the investigation of the channeling of the young girl, and it was obviously a fraud. It was obviously a fake. And in his write up, in his case study, he said that he was able to take her pulse in the dark. Obviously, all the lights were off, and he wasn't able to see like in the way that we would expect. But yeah, it managed to cast a shadow, so there must have been a solid object, which now makes no sense to me. I never considered it before.
Yeah, I suppose some stuff like absorbs enough of the energy, even if it is light energy, that maybe cast a shadow because it's taking everything in its path.
Yes, I like that. I like that concept. I like that theory. That does give credence to my experience. But I think a lot of the time, though, a lot of people that find their way into the paranormal is because they have an experience that's unexplained. And whether that is with spirit, UFO, or something that's happened, is something they haven't quite been able to quantify in themselves. So I think, like everyone else that's probably going to join us today, our story comes from not really knowing what happened and what went on.
Yeah.
So, thinking a little bit and moving forward now. So, we had this childhood experience, and obviously, we've gone from being a young person to the man that you are now. Has there been any experiences that you've had? I want to say recently, but I don't mean as in recent times. I mean as adulthood, where you've experienced something and thought to yourself, "I don't understand what happened there."
Um, yeah. So, um, in the place where my wife lived before here, we had a neighbour who was into paranormal investigation. He's like, "You guys should come with me. It'll be interesting." We were like, "Yeah, why not? We'll give it a crack." And we went with him, and almost every single time I spoke when we were at a place called Cove Hearth, something answered and said, "I found you," every single time.
Oh
Um,
wow.
we heard it on uh, the white noise, and we had it as a disembodied voice on a recording device when we listened back to it later as well. And like when we were going to leave there, I got a pain in my kidney like I've never experienced before in my life. And I've played full contact sports and stuff for years and been damaged in multiple ways. And that was something I've never experienced before. And that was 3, 4 years ago. Um, yeah, never been back there. Don't want to go back there. It's not nice. How about you?
No, and where did you say that was?
Cove. It's near Blytheborough. It's one of the great medieval churches of Suffolk. There's like I think 5 of them. Uh,
Nice.
weird atmosphere.
And also, when we think a little bit about Suffolk area, there's a lot of, I don't know if this is something because I've not really discussed this with you before, um, but there's lot of ufology in Suffolk area, isn't there? Lots of sightings of UFOs and yeah,
Not
okay.
sure on
We
that
we
one.
we'll have to bring someone on to discuss that with us because there seems to be a high level of UFO sightings or reports of UFO sightings in that area. And also in Suffolk itself, there's a lot of paranormal relevance, a lot of folklore, a lot of superstition as well. Um, but a medieval church. That sounds incredible. A couple of weeks ago, me and Laura from the paranormal team, we went to the Black Church in Brascoff, and it was incredible. It is the most. It was almost like the universe was like got the most gothic church in the world. It was like, yeah, actually, that's not true because I've seen that one in is it Germany? That one that's only just been finished.
Oh, I'm not sure.
This is where the ADHD is going to be ADHD in. But there is an incredible Gothic church over in Brascoff, and there's lots of superstitions around it. And the reason why it's black, they can't change the color of the church is because there was a fire and it stained the bricks, so it's quite literally black. But it's a beautiful church, and I love Gothic. I love Gothic churches. There's quite a few um, linked in Essex as well to paranormal sightings. I know that there's quite some infamous churches in Essex that have a lot of superstition attached to it. One that's quite protected now is yes, Ben. So you have got a chat going as well, Gavin. Gavin can't see the chat. So Ben says Cologne Cathedral is the one in Germany. So yes, yeah, absolutely, that's the one. Also someone says, "Hey Adele." I'm just going to assume that they think I look like Adele, and I'll take that all the way. Absolutely take that. Um, but yeah, so there's quite a protected church now. The one that we have in Essex, the Canuden Church. Canuden is the witch area in Essex is quite infamous for having more witches in Canuden than anywhere else in Essex, and there's active covens there as well. Um, so yeah, so churches are a nice location to go to, but they're not always easy ones to be able to get into, or we always need to be a little bit mindful of it being a resting place and if it's an active church and is it still being used for service and things like that. Especially when we think a little bit about what religion thinks of in terms of communicating with spirit.
So there's with Slavic witchcraft, it's a bit interesting because you have a big crossover between old folk magic and modern Christianity. Because in the 12th century, the Slavic people converted en masse to Christianity and it failed, and they went back to paganism. So now, one of the places where old Slavic witchcraft happens is in churches and cathedrals and things, because they still use it as like a place to practice because it's
Oh,
places with high emotion. So they like the positive side of witchcraft practices in churches and things. The negative side, not so much, but yeah.
so when we're thinking a little bit about the positives, what are we talking about?
Well, there's more like, so for example, historically, with the way that I practice witchcraft, which is using herbs and things like that, I probably would have been a doctor or maybe like an alchemist, something like that. But that's because men were allowed to have knowledge. If you did what I do, you would be a witch. Therefore, you would be burnt because you would be smarter than me, which is not allowed. And that's basically all it boils down to, is the fact that you use the world for medicine instead of looking for chemicals or God or something. You prescribe stuff for yourself. It's a bit weird.
I think that we have an example of actually women witchcraft and male witches and female witches. So we move away from the word warlock that doesn't exist, they're not real. um, is male witch, female witch, we're all witches. Um, but you had James Murrell, the cunning man in Hadley. You also had Sarah Moore, who was the sea witch. The cunning man was the person that the king would go and have sessions with to be able to have a look at what the future may hold, whereas Sarah Moore was accused of all sorts of atrocities in her area. Even she was accused of causing the Great Thames Storm 7 years after her passing. So there is a lot of, when it comes to women and men and the practice, especially like historically, there is some like yeah differential kind of ideologies of what that might look like. But I like to think things have moved on, and I think I agree in terms of how we practice now, what they might have been perceived as previous. But there's still quite a lot of negative associations. There's still quite a lot of um, yeah, when it comes to understanding what witchcraft is, there is still a lot of misconceptions, is the word I was looking for.
Yeah, there definitely is. I don't make packs with demons. I just like nice tea.
Like to just chill out before a podcast. That's all we
That's
really
it.
want.
That's it.
Yeah. No, I hear you. I understand that. So you spoke a little bit earlier about your investigation at the church and using some of the equipment that you did. Is there a piece of equipment that you're particularly interested in or something you want to be able to use moving forward?
Um, well, we tried using trigger objects like so many times. They never quite worked out well. But I always remember when I was younger watching paranormal programs on TV, and they'd always use a trigger object. And I can't say if it was rigged or what, but it always like blew my mind having like a crucifix or something, and then just in a room by itself, left all night, and then it's moved even like the tiniest fraction, just moved. That always blew my mind because it's like something that's strong enough to impact the world that is left behind, but also nobody can see it. Or some people might be able to see it. I can't see it. I can't interact with it, but it can interact with something that I can see.
Yeah. I
On
think
it.
I also love trigger objects. I know it's a bit controversial in the world when people think trigger objects, they think cat balls, and it's quite controversial in the paranormal world. But I don't think that when people talk when you say trigger objects, instantly my brain is full of like most haunted references, like Mary Loves Dick and stuff like that, right?
Uh,
And I have that reference when they had a trigger object in it. Obviously, I mean I don't know, entertainment purposes. I don't know if it's faked or not, but I don't know. Anyway, I'm leaning to it was, but I just also can't comment because I weren't there. But I know that there was in the kitchen at 30 East Drive, and cutlery just flew from the kitchen into another room. And I remember them using that as a trigger object and thinking that if only that was real. That was incredible. But yeah, but I think used in the right way, and like you said, even having a realistic expectation of what could happen to a trigger object. So, like you said, even having it moved a millimeter and being able to debunk it as well. So,
yeah,
like if you're in a
100%.
solid building and there's no like lorry is going past and there's nothing that's going to make the building shake and it's kind of locked off and you got a camera in there, anything like that, I think, and then you have that little bit of movement. It is really exciting.
I agree. There's one thing that I would really like to try, which is more of a recent thing for me since learning a bit of like witchcraft stuff, which is using candle. Because when there's an old folklore thing when you're practicing for making a spell where you talk to a candle, and if the candle comes towards you and like interacts with you, that's a positive sign. If it goes away from you and like splutters and wants to go out, that's a negative sign. So you'd be
Okay.
able to use that in a sense, depending on where you are. If you're in a ruins, it's not really going to work. But if you're indoors, you could probably make it work somewhere. And I think that would be super interesting because it's a uh, object with reverence as well. So, and it's something historic and modern.
I agree, and I think I know I've already made reference to Big Laura, but she's a massive fan of the same technique. And what she does is she lets the can when she asks questions, the candle will go high for yes, or the candle go low for no. So yeah, using candles as a way of communicating with spirit, really interesting. It's a subjective experience. It's one that you gotta kind of do by yourself because you gotta trust the process. So if you could do that, for example, being locked into a room per se, like
Yeah.
on your own, everything's kind of, Harry Price, buckle down, and then have a camera on as well up on the camera on the candle on yourself and your surroundings. I think that'd be really cool. Um, there's a couple of people that have commented in the chat. So Ben has said just been looking into the paranormal incidents in Leeds, and they mostly happen in the surrounding areas of Kirkstall, Kirkstall Abbey. Quite interesting. And then Bethnal Archives, which is Jamie Weston from you would have met him at the Colchester Castle event. Gavin has also said hi. So hi Jamie, thank you so much for joining. Um, so there is research that's been done on geomapping. There was a researcher. He was Russian. His name was Konstantin Karatkov. I love him. I've always loved him. But he done a lot of research in geomapping, and he was able to find he was able to map atrocities that would happen on, say, for example, a crossroad that was located on one area that would have a ley line, say for example, and then the next road over there would be no instance whatsoever. Obviously, there's other variables that you can equate it to. You can say, "Oh, it's been because of this or X, Y, Z." But it's quite interesting work. So I would say, Ben, I would look into that geomapping or the work that was done by Constantine. He also talks about how locations like abbeys, there is a lot of, as Gavin has said, there's a lot of intentional work that's done there. It's a place of reverence. So when you think about the amount of energy that gets projected onto that location, it would change the DNA in of it somewhat. So you have increased Yes, he did. He mapped the soul with the. It wasn't MRI. It was kinetic photography. I think it's called. S- Jamie said he mapped the soul of the MRI. Yeah, it was kinetic photography or Keelian photography. Do you know when they do the mapping of the muscles when you go to physiotherapy to see the red, yellow, and he was able to map the soul leaving the body as well. He does some really interesting work around energy mapping and kind of the heightened paranormal experiences as well. So I would totally recommend having a look at him, and I fangirl over him all the time. If only you knew, Gavin. If only you knew. Who am I?
That's all right. Uh,
Yeah.
I think I
So
have my
it's.
own weird fangirl obsessions as well. So
I was just about to ask. It's almost like you're psychic. So who is it? Who's your paranormal otherness related?
um, oh, I don't know off the top of my head. But the only person I can think of is when I was younger, always used to like, and it's most haunted related, so take it as you will. But do you remember Derek Akora?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
Oh,
Like my mum's been to see him live as well.
oh
I don't know,
really?
something about him, the way he says stuff, the way he acts, the way there's just so much. Uh, Either he's the best actor ever, or what he's saying is true because he
I
just
think
says it in such a way that captures. I can't even explain it. Yeah,
I think there's a real pressure to being on TV. There is a real pressure to keep delivering and keep delivering. And I don't know. I mean, I've been doing paranormal investigations now privately and on public events for about 15 years, I say there or thereabouts. And you always, on the public ones in particular, people come along and they want to see like people's heads turning around and like throwing up and like proper exorcist stuff. Yeah, that your mother does stuff in hell, that kind of stuff. That's what they want to see, and it's not. It's not that. It's not that. You've going on the investigation, you've never in your life willed lights to move any more than what you have in that
mm.
moment. Like there is about 10 people just staring at a little box on the floor, just saying, light up, just do something, will you, please? Just light
So it
up.
would be interesting at some point to try like a mixed approach where people bring all their tools, all their science, all the different gadgets, and I just bring a box full of herbs and some candles and sit there and.
Do you know what? You will love Jamie because Jamie is quite good. He's got the equipment, but he also uses a lot of you probably would look at him a bit like a trigger object, but he's used graveyard he's used water that's been blessed by the Vatican. He's used he really tries to link where we are to an item to see if we can increase that activity. And to be fair, a lot of the investigations that we've done, we've been quite fortunate where we've had some really interesting activity. And it probably is linked to the fact that we're not just using, run of the mill paranormal equipment, which is fun, which is great. And
100%.
we've got that. Um, but then even if you think, and I talk about it a lot, I've always spoken about it for a very long time, but the Phillips experiment, which was when they created a ghost. This Dr. Owens in Canada wanted to create a ghost, and he did with his wife. Well, to be fair, I'm going to be honest with you, his wife did a lot of it. She didn't get a lot of credit. Him and his partner did, but she did the most of it. And they were able to create a ghost, and a lot of it was down to the fact that they brought artifacts from the location that they said that this ghost allegedly come from, that where he lived. This guy lived in London, not London, sorry, UK. He brought artifacts from the buildings that he lived in, brought it into the room where they met once a week, and eventually they started to make communication with this spirit called Philip. And on YouTube there's actual videos, they actually televised it, and there's videos of this table just dancing around the room and having communication with spirit, with Philip, and having intellectual kind of responses from it. Now I don't know whether something just stepped in or whether they did actually make something, but having the artifacts of that location really enhanced it. So I think that would be good if we could, maybe that would be something that we can give a bit of an experiment to. In particular, and Jamie agrees, yeah, I like that idea where it can be will to exist. Exactly. I think maybe this would be a good idea with either at Hadley with James Murrell or at South Leon C with Sarah Moore. And Sarah Moore was an alchemist. There was a plague at the time. Um, and not a plague, sorry. I was gonna call it something else, but it's not. I'm sure if I said that, it probably wouldn't be able to. Uh, oh, what is it? Diarrhea, basically. Oh, it's what is it called? And they
Dysentery?
really poured it. Yeah, I think yes. And that it really went through the village. So she left vials of I think it was some kind of liquid that would help people with pain. Um, and so she would use herbs and she would use oils and things to kind of as remedies. So that would be really interesting if we could get somewhere like Sarah Moore and be able to use some of the tools or some of the alchemist ways of being able to see if we can bring her forward. What I will say though is she used to sell men wind. I don't know what that says about men, but they used to give her a silver coin just to get. And she used to just tie a string to air and just give them the string. So that was interesting. That's an interesting concept.
Simple people,
Jamie had
simple places.
yeah, yeah. I was like, "Huh, oh, what? You're a genius, you is. So
Yeah.
do you want some nice air? Yeah, give me some silver and I'll give you some nice air." Jamie said, "I'm filming for a week at the Harwich Readout Fort, which is meant to be active. Um, so I wouldn't need selling wind. I have enough." Fair enough. Fair enough. And the Readout Fort, that is a really cool location. Have you been there before, Gavin?
I don't think so.
It is a really cool. We had some. I'll let you know, Jamie. Just because of your tech, we went for an investigation and we got quite a lot of activity that night. And we went into the little courtyard thingy area, and that's the technical term. And I had my phone in my pocket, and it was on airplane mode because yeah, we can't it can interfere with the equipment. Once we'd finished and I'd got my phone out, there was a big yellow triangle on the front of my screen. It got corrupted. So from literally in my pocket, I have no idea what happened. It wouldn't work again. I had to send it. It was the actual software got corrupted. So
No.
that was an interesting evening. I had to send the phone back and they replaced it for me because it was an issue with the phone, not a fault or damage or it being broken per se. But yeah, the software was corrupted.
That's
How does
unfortunate.
that? I mean, it was pretty cool. It was like, wow, okay, okay, but also it sucked because then my phone was broken. I was without a phone for a little while. But yeah. So if there was anywhere this year that you'd like to go to, or the next year, sorry, 2026, if you was to create a dream list of places to go, where would it be on your list to investigate?
Ah, I can't remember the name of the castle, but there's a castle up in Scotland where there is two two boys who were due to inherit the crown of Scotland, and their uncle basically came to visit, and he murdered them all. Like he murdered all their household, he murdered them, and then he took the crown for himself. That sort of place would be phenomenal. Any big old castle like York would be
Oh,
amazing. Like
yes.
Bath would be amazing as well. Any of those like big major cities. I remember when I was little hearing stories about Bath where there's like people would see like ghosts of Romans, which is super specific, saying as it's a Roman city. Um, or one that's even more local is Blythrow.
Okay.
There's a story there that the church, one of the people that went to the church there got killed by Black Shuck.
Oh, yeah, we did some work around the Black Shuck, or
Yeah, it's a church
one of
where
them.
I can't remember what door it is, but supposedly they've still got a door from when black shark tried to get in and has supposedly got gouge marks down it. And I've been there so many times and I've not seen the door. And I'm not sure if it's just one of those tales that people tell. Um, but yeah, it would be interesting to do a proper investigation there. And it's right on a river as well, which is quite good for paranormal.
Absolutely, a bit of water. And Jamie said, "Yeah, it's a church door, isn't it?" So, referring to the
Mm.
black shuck, yeah. And Ben said, "York is a good place. There's plenty of things you could investigate." Absolutely. I think it would be really cool to kind of travel a little bit more next year around the UK. There is some incredible places. I think, like you, York, definitely. There is some, even if it's just, I'm really, I don't know whether it's quite consumer led, but the little York ghost merchants. It's a long way to travel just to stand 2 hours for a shop, but they look so cool. It's so cool.
I'll give
But
it a
there
go.
is also, yeah, but there's lots of locations around York as well. That's quite interesting. So, I mean, as an investigator, obviously these indoor locations, a lot of the time, if you're going to book them privately, you need insurance, and it definitely is like it's important that those things are in place. Um, in terms of my favorite kind of places to investigate, I like the big locations that you do need to book and you do, everything is done properly. But they're so saturated. They're so over investigated. What I really love is finding little gems of like,
I have, sorry,
no, go on.
I was going to say there's one of them right down the road from me, literally about a 10-minute walk, is the last gibbet that was used in the UK,
Oh
or the
wow.
remains of it, the Pottsford gibbet. I've been there a few times. It's always super weird energy. I'm a relatively foresty person. Like nighttime forests set you on edge, no matter where you are, who you are. If you say they don't, there's something wrong with you. Um, but there is this like something's watching you all the time. Like no matter where you look, there's always behind you, and it makes you feel really, really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Like
It,
prey. Like I've when I lived in Canada, I've seen big things that would eat you, and it feels like that. And in this country, there's not that, and it's horrible. Mm.
And I think as well, though, that's a really good interest that within itself does stuff to the body. So obviously, when we're in that kind of prey mentality, it does kick off that ancient fear system, that flight, fight, freeze response. It kind of wants us either to like we need to fight our way out, otherwise we're going to become food. So I think it's really interesting actually, because when that kind of happens, your body is high alert. You're seeing things differently, so you can see less in color, you see more in movement, you're hyper vigilant, you're hearing things, you got all those body responses like, skin becoming clammy and things like that. I think, but then saying that, I say all of this, and if I'm in the woods, I remember the first time we ever did Hockley Woods in Essex, and it's one of the oldest woods in the UK. And I think it's got like links to Aleister Crowley and things like that. And I remember walking through this canopy of trees, and there's no light coming in. It's pitch black. It's a long trek down, and then all you see is an opening with a tree in front of you, and it's quite ominous. It's not a nice feeling. So straight away, you feel all enclosed. And then you come out into a clearing. You feel like Bambi's mum. Because like you just got a circle and they say never stare into a tree line, never shine a torch into a tree line, never look into a tree line because you never know what's going to be looking back. And yeah, it is. It's very uncomfortable. Yeah. And then but then we got quite a lot of activity that night, and I wonder whether that's because we were being hyper vigilant or actually we were getting quite a lot of activity. There
And
was
I
a
think
man's
it's
voice that come through.
six of one, half a dozen of the other, isn't it? If you're comfortable, you don't hear things that you wouldn't normally hear. If you're uncomfortable, then you hear more. And then sometimes maybe you didn't actually hear what you thought you heard.
Yeah, I mean, we attribute a lot of human emotion to inanimate objects as well, which is something that we're quite good at. we look for patterns in things, don't we? Our brains are fixed to see faces, but we're also fixed to apply human emotion to inanimate noises. And I think those two things are like fundamentally what's wrong with a lot of paranormal investigators is that sometimes it can be explained away.
Well, look, there's a lot in old folklore there where the trees carry emotion. So, like forests, for example, there's a lot of emotion in forests, especially old forests, because there's always where bad things happen to anybody and everybody. And the trees remember, and sometimes the trees give back. Not always when you want it, and not always what you want either. Um,
No, and I tell you, thinking a little bit about that as well, something I learned recently is that trees communicate through their roots, right? And what was that film where the trees turn on human?
Cloverfield? No, Cloverfield.
No, one Cloverfield. I can't remember what it was called now, but I remember that one where the trees turn on humans. I just feel like there's an element of truth in it, though. Knowing that the trees do communicate in that way, and I agree with anything. If something happens with such emotion, it leaves a footprint, it leaves a fingerprint behind. Sometimes it can just be a recording, but sometimes it can leave something, can make space or leave a something other than just that recording. And I think that can, yeah, you're right. Sometimes that can play out in ways that are quite uncomfortable. So that being by yourself at night with the trees.
No,
Yes.
no, I'm okay.
Ben says, Lord of the Rings, the trees rise up and fight the forces of Isengard. Yeah, fairs.
Isengard. Isengard.
I, I probably have butchered that pronunciation.
Yeah, yeah.
You did, Kerry. Is this where you disconnect? Yeah, no.
3 days
Terrible
and
weather
at the
here.
end.
All right, I do apologize, everyone. I butchered that pronunciation, but we know what I meant. But yeah, I do think though there is a lot of, and also there is a lot of superstition. I know we keep talking about superstition and folklore. I don't know, it just feels like the theme for me tonight. But there is a lot that trees play into in terms of that as well.
So with Slavic witchcraft, we'll go back to that because it's the easiest thing for me. There's I think there's 5 major places where you can go for power. One's churches, one's graveyards, one's forests, one's swamps, and one's the sea. They're all places that have major power because they have major emotions tied to them. Um, then there are also places where you get a lot of paranormal investigations, that tend to have a lot of activity, and it all kind of ties together with old knowledge, new experiments, and they all kind of meet at the same crossroads, regardless of whether people want them to or not.
I think that would be an interesting project for next year. I don't know if Jamie's still in the chat. I don't know if he's still here, but that would be a really interesting project for next year to be able to, if we can see if we can do some research that's kind of underpinned by that. Looking at maybe doing a bit of geomapping, maybe looking at locations that are tied to one of those. And it feels like very elemental as well. Yeah, when it comes to
Yeah,
that, the water, air, earth, fire,
fire.
it kind of
Uh,
just feels very
yeah,
elemental as well.
and then you have the spiritual with the church and the graveyard as well.
Same. We've got the pentagram. So I think that would be a really interesting project for next year. I think maybe Jamie might not be about. He's very good. He's got about 10,000 projects above his head. He probably is watching 5 podcasts in one go, honestly. Our ADHD has nothing on his ADHD, absolutely not. But yeah, so that would be really interesting if we could see how that could what kind of research we could do with that. That'd be incredible. I think that's kind of what we're missing a little bit at the moment when it comes to the paranormal. I still watch paranormal shows. I watch probably more for the location than I do about the research because I just get a bit angry sometimes at some of the approaches. Not that my way is the right way. It's just sometimes I'm like, that is definitely not. Anyway, whatevs, whatevs. Um, but I do feel like we're missing that, ethically researched, the kind of the approach where you acknowledge that spirit could potentially exist, but you do it in a way where you're being respectful.
Yeah, I think like for me, I know just enough to be dangerous. That we don't know enough about the human mind to rule out that we don't make things happen. Like there is no such thing as spirits, and we are making stuff happen because you get a group of people so focused on hearing somebody respond, or a disembodied voice, or seeing something move, or something go out, or something come on, that it then makes it happen like a group effort. Or there is other stuff, and then from us focusing on it so much is what gives it the fuel to actually do its business as well, which is kind of
Absolutely.
terrifying. But
It is a little bit terrifying, but it is also really interesting. I agree. So, like when you think about going back to film and TV, when we think about the not paranormal investigations, like the films that are focused on hauntings. So, for example, Exorcist. Even don't we mention Conjuring? Those typical case studies are families that are struggling, pubescent young girl, a separation in the family, behavioral concerns, um, a new beginning because there needs to be one, not because they want it to be, a deprivation of capital. There's so many things that are going on, but a lot of the time it is the young girl that's just hit puberty because it's believed that that young girl has the power of telekinesis because of what's happening within her, that she's able to create this manifestation of spirit. And it's the same formula a lot of the time. I use Exorcist as the main example there, but even in Enfield Haunting, when the lights go out, what's that Pontefract? There's just three of them, but there's quite a few. It's quite similar.
it's actually like a really, really old belief system, to be fair, because in a lot of folklore, men aren't naturally magic, women are.
It's true.
Um, Men have
It's
to
true.
work a lot harder some of the time, not all of the time. Um, but women naturally are more in tune with that side of themselves. So then a young woman not knowing that she's a like natural born witch or psychic or however you want to phrase it is more likely than it being a man. Not impossible, but
And also we link it to the moon cycles, and the moon cycles impacts the energy, in particular, if you think about water. But yeah, there's that link to moon cycles there as well. There is lots that happen, and also when you think about the older belief systems, we have the goddess, and then we have the gods, but the goddess is usually they believe that she isn't a single parent, but very much there's a revenants. Both gods and goddesses are very kind of, but at the same time, you've got the triple goddess and you've got the goddesses that lead. And so I think it depends on what kind of belief system you look at, depends on, the matriarchy or the patriarchy of that kind of setup. But I do feel like that's something that's linked to it as well.
yeah, 100%.
And even with spiritualism, there is a belief that women are closer to God than men. So that's how the Socrates got quite a lot of their propaganda during the Victorian era, because they would use mediumship as a way of being able to commune with men without having a man speak for them, because they'd use the guise of being able to um, offer mediumship, divine guidance. So that even within the spiritualist movement, they believe that women are closer to God than men. Again, this is all different perceptions. There's no like this is what it is and what it isn't, but it's just quite interesting.
Yeah, like I've seen different takes and different ways. Like when I lived in Canada, it could go either way. You get wise women and wise men over here. Like whenever you think of a druid or a shaman, there's always a man, never a woman. or very rarely a
Yeah.
woman. But then when you think of a witch, it's almost always a woman. It's very rarely a man. But then, like, there's so many stories, like Freya in Norse mythology, the only one who knows Seda, which is natural magic. She has to teach Odin, who's not as good at it as she is. And then, like, with the Slavs, you've got Baba Yaga, a natural witch, and scary, crazy,
Yeah.
powerful witch. But you don't have a male equivalent either. You have demons and all sorts, but
No.
not a male witch. You have
Have you
sorcerers.
noticed that with some of the darker goddesses though, there doesn't seem to be a male equivalent to the darker goddess, like
Yeah, no,
Baba, like Medusa, like Ceridwen in the Celtics belief system. There doesn't seem to be male counterparts.
there's hell as well for the Norse, which is half dead, half alive, looks after the afterlife for the people that don't die gloriously. Um, but then, like with Slavic mythology, there isn't really a dark goddess that I've found so far.
Okay.
The the opposite, like they're quite light, blonde haired, blue eyed, very loving, very caring, very nurturing. Um, Slightly different to some of the Polish women I got in my family, but
We don't talk
um,
about that.
but yeah, it's just like different cultures, different things. Like, I don't know much about the Native American, I can't lie. But what I do know is there's a lot more like animism, like, so they believe in the great eagle rather than a humanoid god. They believe in like spirit animals rather than people, and in a way, I kind of prefer that. Um, I don't know if they're gendered though. I've got to read up on that. That's going to be a
A new
wild
little
ride.
journey there. Yeah, Ben says he used to like Hell until Marvel made a mockery of her.
Yeah, fair, valid. Yeah, which is, I think, misunderstood. Same with a lot of Loki's children in Norse mythology, because there's nothing inherently bad or good in Norse mythology. Everything's neutral. Everything has a reason. Everything has a purpose. And she's the caretaker for all of the dead. It's not a nice job, but she's not a horrible person because of it. She's just dark because she's always surrounded by the dead, not the living. But she's half alive, but never gets to cater to that half of herself. And I think it's so easy to misconstrue her for an evil person if you look at her through a modern lens, but I don't think she is.
I think it's quite interesting. I think mainstream. I think um, when some of the older traditional ways of belief is then mainstreamed, I do feel like they get watered down a little bit,
100%.
and the narrative around them is manipulated to kind of fit the perception that wants to be recreated. And I think we've seen that throughout time. We see that in even, for example, and I'm going off subject, but I'm not. When we think a little bit about Halloween and when people dress their children up as witches and they paint their face green and they don't really understand where that comes from. And it's because of the abuse that the women were subjected to, that their skin tone would change because of the bruising. So I feel like things get manipulated to fit a narrative. It loses its story and it loses its you know, the journey. And I think that's what happens a lot with the goddesses when they get represented into like Marvel films, things like that. Ben says, "I love Loki's story, so complex."
Yeah, it's another one that he does just as much good as he does bad. Right. As a bit of an ass, but like, there's so many stories where he does the right thing. There's so many stories where he does the wrong thing. There's so many stories where he does the weird thing. And I think that's what makes him nice. Like, he's kind of, but all of the Norse gods are relatable. That's the point of them. They're human to a degree. They have anger. They're not perfect. They have emotions. They don't know everything. They're trying to learn. They're trying to grow. They're trying to change. And most of them can't or don't. Um,
Yeah.
and it's all just human stories that are retold from a perspective of someone that's stronger, bigger, badder. And it's nice. It's refreshing compared to other religions. Um,
Absolutely. And I think that's a really good I mean, today's, podcast was just really, everyone reintroducing themselves to myself and then introducing themselves to you as well, Gavin, as we move forward as with our podcast journey. I think we've come to a place where I feel it'd be a really nice place to end.
Mhm.
Um, but one of the things that I'm looking forward to the most is looking at some of these case studies, and also you're an incredible storyteller. So I'm
Thank
really
you.
enjoying, really going to look forward to you retelling some of these stories.
Hopefully, I can do them justice.
I reckon you will, but it's not. You're not. I say not just. You're a very good storyteller, but you also have your own business and you do lots of markets up and down the country. So did you want to share a little bit about your business and what you do?
So I make different holistic crystal jewelry, which is all copper based. That looks like this. And then I also sell these, which is what I've been playing with, which are little Slavic charm pouches. But yeah, I sell mainly pagan items, which can be quite enjoyable at farmers markets and things. Um, but yeah, half of it's meeting people, talking to people, and like getting to hear other people's stories as well. That keeps it enjoyable for me. Um, it's a lot of fun. I've only been doing it for I think 8 months now. It's my 8th month. So hopefully next year will be even better, but who knows? Yes.
Absolutely, and I've got some of your pieces. I think half of my team have got some of your pieces. I've got
Yeah,
my gold sheen obsidian, which I take everywhere with me. It comes to Romania with me a little while ago. Uh,
yeah, hundred
it is my
percent.
most favorite piece. So Ben said, "Can I buy online anywhere?"
No, but you can message me through Instagram or Facebook. Um, I'm going to be setting up a website hopefully over Christmas and that, but
S-
busy time.
Just so Ben will be able to find you. And I will never get this spelling correct. So if you spell me your business's name and I can put it into the chat.
As DVERGR jewelry, dwarven jewelry. That's what it means.
Do you know what? I feel like the weather it's funny because as we said this in a chat the other day, I was like the weather's so bad the signal drops, right? It really is. The weather is terrible here. So our signal, our video link keeps glitching. But I've put it in in the chat. And if you follow Seventh Sanctum on either Facebook or on Instagram, then there is Gavin's business has been linked in the posts that are there. So you can find there. Ben says, "Sweet, I will drop you a message."
Thank you so much.
So we'll say thank you so much for joining us this evening. We really have enjoyed spending some time with you. We shall be back next week on this YouTube. It should get shared onto our Facebook and it will also be shared onto our other streaming platforms. We are part of Paranormal UK Radio Network. So this video will be downloaded and then put onto Spotify and other streaming platforms as well. So if you want to have a listen back, you're more than welcome to. So we'll say thank you so much for joining us. Until next time. Keep it spooky, maybe?
I'll do.
Let's
I'll do.
keep it spooky. Bye, everyone.
Bye.